The night air in Rio de Janeiro thrummed with the heartbeat of carnival. Feathers of emerald and gold shimmered under floodlights, drums pounded like distant thunder, and the streets pulsed with 1,000 bodies moving as one. High above the avenue, on a private balcony overlooking the Sambadrome, Vincenzo Mered stood apart from the revelry, a glass of cachaça untouched in his hand. At 35, the Sicilian Mafia Boss had seen too much darkness to believe in magic. Until now. Below, amid the whirlwind of dancers, one woman commanded the parade. Isabella Santos moved like liquid fire, her body a living flame in a costume of crimson sequins and swirling plumes. Her dark curls cascaded down her back, catching the lights with every sinuous twist of her hips. She was samba incarnate, joy and sorrow braided together, passion poured into every step. The crowd roared for her, but Isabella danced only for the music, for the release it gave her bruised heart. Vincenzo's breath caught the moment her eyes lifted and found his across the impossible distance. The noise faded. The world narrowed to a single point of contact. Her gaze, fierce and luminous, locking onto his shadowed one. In that instant, something cracked open inside him, a guarded place he had long declared dead. Her lips curved in the faintest smile, not for the thousands watching, but for him alone. An electric current surged between them, wordless, yet louder than any drum. When her float finally passed and the parade spilled into side streets, Vincenzo moved without thinking. He descended through the throng, his tailored black suit and dangerous aura parting the crowd like a blade. Backstage was chaos, dancers laughing, makeup running, champagne flowing, but he saw only her. Isabella stood beneath a string of bare bulbs, wiping sweat from her neck with a towel, her costume half shed to reveal a simple black slip that clung to her damp skin. She looked exhausted, radiant, untouchable. He stopped a few paces away, suddenly unsure. Men like him took what they wanted. They did not ask. Yet here he was, rooted, waiting for permission he had never sought before. Isabella felt his presence before she saw him. She turned, and the air between them thickened again. Up close, he was even more striking, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp cheekbones and eyes the color of storm-tossed seas. A faint scar traced his jaw, speaking of violence barely contained. Yet there was something else in his expression tonight, raw wonder. "You watched me," she said in Portuguese, her voice low and husky from hours of singing along with the batteria. "Every second," he answered in flawless Italian-accented Portuguese. "I couldn't look away." A smile tugged at her lips. "Most men watch the costume. You watched me." "Because the costume is beautiful," he said quietly, stepping closer. "But you are unforgettable."
Isabella's heart stuttered. She was used to admiration, to hungry glances and bold propositions. This was different. His words carried weight, reverence. She should have turned away. Strangers during carnival were fleeting, meaningless, but the pull between them was undeniable. "What is your name?" she asked. "Vincenzo." He offered no surname. In his world, it was both shield and weapon. "Isabella." She extended her hand, expecting a handshake. Instead, he lifted it slowly to his lips, brushing a kiss across her knuckles that sent heat racing up her arm. "Walk with me," he said. It was not a command, though it could have been. It was a plea. She should have refused. She had promised herself no more complications, no more men who burned bright and left ashes. Yet she found herself nodding. They slipped away from the noise into the warm embrace of the night. Copacabana Beach stretched before them, moon-silvered waves whispering against the sand. The distant thump of samba faded, until there was only the ocean and the man beside her. They walked in silence at first, shoes discarded, bare feet sinking into cool sand. Vincenzo stopped beneath a cluster of palms and turned to her. Moonlight carved shadows across his face, softening the hard lines. "In a life full of shadows," he said, voice rough with honesty he rarely allowed, "you are the only light I've ever wanted." Isabella's breath hitched. No one had ever spoken to her like that, as though she were salvation itself. She searched his eyes and saw not calculation, but vulnerability laid bare. "And you," she whispered, stepping closer until their bodies nearly touched. Look like a man who carries too many shadows. He cupped her face gently, thumbs tracing the curve of her cheekbones. Tonight, I want none of them. Their first kiss was slow, inevitable. His lips brushed hers once, twice, testing, tasting, then claimed her with a hunger tempered by reverence. Isabella melted into him, arms winding around his neck as the world dissolved. The kiss deepened, breathless and all-consuming, tasting of salt and cachacha and unspoken longing. His hand slid down her back, pulling her flush against him, hers tangled in his dark hair. Time lost meaning. Somehow they sang to the sand, hidden in the palm shadows. Clothes fell away like inhibitions. Skin met skin beneath a canopy of stars, every touch reverend, every sigh a promise. Vincenzo worshipped her body with lips and hands, learning her as though she were sacred text. Isabella arched beneath him, giving herself over to the fire they ignited together. When he finally entered her, it felt like coming home, like two broken halves made whole. Afterward they lay entwined, hearts bounding in unison. The ocean sang its eternal lullaby. Vincenzo traced lazy patterns along her spine. "Stay with me tonight," he murmured against her temple.
Isabella pressed a kiss to his chest, over the steady beat of his heart. "Just tonight," she agreed softly, though both knew it was already more. Above them, the stars bore witness to whispered promises neither believed they could keep. Promises of tomorrow, of forever, of a love fierce enough to burn away the darkness closing in from worlds apart.
The morning after Carnival dawned soft and golden over Rio. Isabella woke in Vincenzo's arms in a suite overlooking Copacabana, the sheets tangled around them like the remnants of a dream. He was already awake, watching her with an intensity that made her heart race anew. Without a word, he brushed a curl from her face and kissed her slowly, as if memorizing the taste of her. "Pack nothing," he murmured against her lips. "Everything you need is waiting." Hours later, she stood barefoot on the deck of his yacht, Stella del Mare, as it cut through the turquoise waters off Ilha Grande. The Brazilian coast receded behind them, lush green hills giving way to endless ocean. Vincenzo had dismissed the crew to distant quarters. For 3 perfect days, the world belonged only to them. Sunrise found them wrapped in a single blanket on the foredeck. The sky bled rose and amber as Vincenzo pulled her onto his lap, her back against his chest. His arms circled her waist, lips brushing the curve of her neck with each breath she took. They watched the sun lift itself from the sea in silence, then turned to one another for the first kiss of the day, gentle, lingering, tasting of salt and promise. Days blurred into a haze of sun and skin. They danced barefoot on the polished teak deck at dusk, Isabella teaching him the fluid sway of samba, while a hidden sound system played soft bossa nova. He was a quick study, his strong hands guiding her hips until their bodies moved as one, laughter spilling between them when he stumbled. Under the stars they swayed slower, foreheads touching, her fingers laced behind his neck. "Feel the music in your blood," she whispered. "I feel only you," he answered, voice rough with desire. Meals were simple, intimate rituals. They fed each other slices of mango and papaya on the aft deck, juice running down chins and wrists, chased away with kisses. One afternoon, Vincenzo lay on his back while Isabella straddled him, feeding him sweet pineapple from her fingers. When a drop fell to his chest, she bent to lick it away slowly, deliberately, until his hands tightened on her thighs and the fruit was forgotten. On the second night, anchored in a secluded cove where the water glowed phosphorescent, Isabella's laughter faded into quiet tears. They were lying tangled in the master cabin, moonlight striping the bed through open portholes. She traced the scar along his ribs, an old knife wound, and suddenly the weight of her past pressed too heavily. Vincenzo pulled her against him, cradling her head to his heart. His arms were steel bands of protection around her shaking body.
"Look at me, amore." He tilted her chin until their eyes met, his own fierce and unguarded. "I will never let anyone hurt you again. Not the ghosts of yesterday, not the dangers of tomorrow, and certainly not myself. You are safe with me, Isabella. Always." She searched his face and saw truth there, raw, terrifying, beautiful. Fresh tears fell, but this time they were healing. She kissed him then, pouring every broken piece of herself into his keeping, and he took them all, reverently, as though she were offering him salvation. In the quiet hours after love, when their bodies were spent and hearts still racing, Vincenzo would trace patterns across her skin, along her collarbone, down the curve of her spine, over the soft swell of her hip, as if mapping sacred ground. His touch was worshipful, lingering, branding her gently with devotion. She felt cherished in a way she had never known possible. "I have waited my whole life for you," he whispered once, lips against the hollow of her throat. "I just didn't know it until Rio." On the fourth morning, the yacht turned north toward the open Atlantic. Sicily called him home. Family, duty, shadows he could no longer postpone. Isabella stood at the rail, wind whipping her hair, a quiet ache blooming in her chest. Vincenzo came behind her, arms sliding around her waist, chin resting on her shoulder. "Come with me," he said simply. "Let me show you my world." She turned in his embrace, searching the storm-gray eyes that had become her horizon. "And if your world tries to take you from me, then I will burn it down before I let it touch you." The words should have frightened her. Instead, they settled warm and sure around her heart. When Stella del Mare finally docked in Palermo's ancient harbor beneath a sky ablaze with sunset, Vincenzo led her down the gangway hand in hand. The Moretti family waited on the quay, his mother, siblings, cousins, an old Sicilian dynasty watching their enigmatic leader with open curiosity. Vincenzo did not release her fingers. He drew her close to his side and faced them all, pride and possession in every line of his body. "This is Isabella," he announced in Italian, voice ringing clear across the water. "La mia anima, my soul." His mother's eyes widened. His sister Sophia gasped softly. Whispers rippled through the group like wind through olive leaves. They had seen Vincenzo with women before, beautiful, temporary distractions. They had never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at Isabella now, as though she were the answer to a prayer he had never dared voice. He lifted Isabella's hand to his lips, pressing a lingering kiss to her knuckles, while his gaze never left his family. A silent declaration. This one was different. This one was forever.
As the sun dipped behind Mount Pellegrino, painting the sea in fire, Isabella felt the weight of new eyes upon her, some warm, some wary, but none of it mattered. Vincenzo's fingers tightened around hers, grounding her. Whatever storms awaited in this ancient land of blood and loyalty, they would face them together. For the first time in years, Vincenzo Moretti walked toward home with light in his heart instead of shadows. And Isabella, hand clasped firmly in his, stepped into the unknown, certain of only one thing. Wherever this man led, she would follow, because in his arms she had already found her way home. The Villa Moretti, perched high on the cliffs above Taormina, its pale stone walls drenched in the perfume of lemon blossoms and sea salt. Bougainvillea spilled in cascades of violet and crimson over ancient arches, and every window framed a view of the Ionian Sea, glittering like scattered sapphires. For Isabella, the first weeks in Sicily felt like stepping into a dream woven from sunlight and Vincenzo's unwavering devotion. Mornings began with stolen kisses in the olive groves that terraced the hillside behind the villa. The trees were centuries old, their gnarled trunks twisted like lovers frozen mid-embrace. Vincenzo would pull her behind one, pressing her gently against the rough bark, his mouth finding hers with a hunger that never seemed to fade. Sunlight filtered through silver-green leaves, dappling their skin, as his hands slid beneath the thin cotton of her sundress, tracing the curve of her spine until she trembled. "You taste like summer," he would murmur against her throat, voice low and reverent, "like everything good I was never meant to have." Evenings belonged to the cliffside terrace, where the family gathered for long dinners beneath strings of bare bulbs. After the plates were cleared and the older relatives retired, Vincenzo would draw Isabella into a slow dance to the faint strains of an old record spinning in the salon. No one else existed, only the sway of their bodies, the crash of waves far below, and the warmth of his hand splayed possessively across the small of her back. One twilight, as the sky bled from rose to indigo, he led her to a cushioned bench overlooking the sea. From his pocket, he drew a velvet box. Inside lay a necklace, a single flawless diamond suspended from a delicate platinum chain, catching the last light like a captured star. "It pales next to your eyes," he said quietly, fastening it around her throat. His fingers lingered at her nape, brushing the fine hairs there. "But I wanted you to wear something that reminds you, every moment you're away from me, that you carry my heart with you." Isabella touched the stone, tears pricking her lashes. "Vincenzo, it's too much. Nothing is too much for you," he answered fiercely. "Not jewels, not my name, not my life. You are everything, la mia anima." He kissed her then, deep and slow, until the world narrowed to the salt taste of his lips and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her palm. The family watched them with a mixture of wonder and quiet speculation. Vincenzo's mother, Donna Elena, observed the way her son's gaze followed Isabella across every room, burning, protective, utterly captivated. His younger sister Sofia whispered to cousins that she had never seen her brother smile so freely. Even the sternest uncle softened when Vincenzo's hand found Isabella's under the table, his thumb tracing endless circles over her knuckles.
Only Marco, Vincenzo's charming younger brother, seemed unaffected by the gravity of it all. 28, quick to laugh, and blessed with the same dark Moretti looks but none of the weight, Marco treated Isabella like a sister from the first day. He teased her gently about her Portuguese accent when she practiced Italian phrases, taught her Sicilian card games, and made her laugh until her sides ached during long afternoons by the pool. Their banter was light, innocent, a bright counterpoint to the intensity she shared with Vincenzo. Yet every time Isabella's laughter rang out at something Marco said, Vincenzo's eyes would find her across the terrace. The adoration in them never dimmed. If anything, it burned brighter, as though her joy was a treasure he alone had uncovered. One moonlit night, after a family dinner filled with wine and stories, Isabella slipped away to the lower garden that tumbled down toward the sea. The air was thick with jasmine, and the waves below sang their eternal song. She found Sophia sitting on a stone bench beneath a trellis heavy with night-blooming flowers. They had grown close quickly, two women navigating the intricate currents of a powerful family. Isabella sank down beside her, clutching the diamond at her throat. "Sophia," she began, voice trembling with emotion she could no longer contain, "I need to say this aloud or I'll burst." Sophia turned, concern softening her features. "Tell me." Tears welled in Isabella's eyes as she stared out at the silvered sea. "I've never loved anyone like this. Vincenzo, he is my heart, my everything. I would give up the world for him. Rio, dancing, every dream I ever had, if it meant I could stay by his side. He makes me feel whole, safe, cherished in a way I never thought possible." A sob escaped her, half joy, half fear. "I'm terrified of how much I love him. What if it's too much? What if I lose him?" Sophia reached for her hand, squeezing gently. "He feels the same, Isabella. Anyone with eyes can see it. My brother is lost to you in the best possible way." High above on the upper terrace, hidden in the deep shadows cast by climbing roses, Vincenzo paused with a glass of grappa halfway to his lips. He had come searching for Isabella, drawn by the ache that always bloomed when she was out of sight. Her voice drifted up to him on the warm night breeze, soft, broken, achingly sincere. "Never loved anyone like this. My heart, my everything. I would give up the world for him." The words pierced him like arrows. But then the wind shifted, carrying only fragments. Terrified, lose him. His grip tightened on the glass. In the darkness, doubt, old, familiar, poisonous, began to coil in his chest. She sounded so anguished, so torn. Who else could inspire such depth of feeling? Not him, surely. Not a man whose hands were stained with blood and secrets. He did not hear the rest, did not hear her whisper his name like a prayer.
Vincenzo turned away, the grappa burning untouched down his throat, unaware that the greatest threat to their happiness was not the shadows of his world, but the shadows already creeping into his heart. The rift began quietly, like a crack in marble that widens only when you look away. It was a late afternoon, heavy with the threat of rain. Vincenzo had returned from Palermo earlier than expected, his shirt speckled with someone else's blood beneath the dark jacket he hadn't bothered to change. A rival family's messenger had been sent back to Catania with a warning carved into flesh rather than words. Vincenzo's hands still trembled faintly with the aftermath, not from fear, but from the knowledge that every choice he made dragged him deeper into the abyss. He found Isabella in the salon, reading by the open French doors. She looked up, smile blooming, but it faltered the instant she saw his face. The air between them turned brittle. "You're hurt," she said, rising quickly. "It's not mine." His voice was flat, exhausted. He poured a glass of grappa and downed it in one motion. Isabella crossed to him, reaching for the lapel he held closed with a clenched fist. "Let me see." "No." He caught her wrist gently but firmly, stopping her. The distance in his eyes was worse than anger. Her heart lurched. "Vincenzo, talk to me, don't shut me out." He released her as if her skin burned him. "This is who I am, Isabella. Blood and threats and men who would use you to get to me. I thought I could keep you separate, keep you clean, but I was wrong. You deserve light, not this endless night." "So you'll decide for me?" Her voice cracked. "You'll push me away because it's safer for me? I'm not some fragile thing to be protected in a glass case. I chose you, all of you. I'm trying to save you," he said hoarsely. "From what? From loving you?" Tears gathered in her dark eyes. "You're breaking my heart to keep it safe. That's not salvation, Vincenzo. That's cowardice." The word struck him like a slap. He turned away, shoulders rigid. "Maybe it is." Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then quietly, "I need air." He left her standing there, the diamond at her throat catching the last slant of sunlight like a tear frozen mid-fall. That evening, Isabella could not bear the walls of the villa. She slipped out to the private garden that clung to the cliff's edge, a secret place of pomegranate trees and marble benches where the sea roared far below and the sky felt close enough to touch. The first stars were pricking through the deepening blue. She sank onto the coolest bench, clutching the necklace he had fastened around her neck only days ago. The diamond rested heavy against her skin, a promise now twisted into pain. She spoke to the night, to the wind, to the man who was no longer there to hear her. "Vincenzo, my love," her voice broke on his name. "What have we done? I ache for you every moment you're gone from me. Even when you're in the same room, I feel you slipping away. You're the air I breathe. How am I supposed to live without air?" Tears spilled freely now, tracing hot paths down her cheeks. She pressed the diamond to her lips as if it could carry her words to him. "I can't stop thinking about you, about us. Every beat of my heart belongs to you, only you. I would cross oceans, burn cities, give everything if it meant you'd let me stay beside you. Don't you know that? Don't you feel it?" Her words were soft, meant for no ears but the stars and the restless sea. But Vincenzo had come searching for her. He had paced the villa like a caged animal, guilt and fear gnawing at him until he could bear it no longer. He needed to apologize, to pull her close and swear he would find a way, any way, to keep her safe without driving her away. He followed the faint scent of jasmine she always wore down the stone steps to the lower garden. He saw her silhouette against the twilight before she saw him, heard her voice, low and trembling, carried on the breeze. "Ache for you every moment. You're the air I breathe." His steps slowed. He meant to call her name, but the next words froze him in the shadows of a cypress tree. "Can't stop thinking about him. Every beat of my heart belongs to him. I would burn cities, give everything." The wind stole pieces, twisted others. Him, not Vincenzo. Someone else. Someone who made her willing to sacrifice the world. A cold, sick wave crashed over him. All the warmth they had built, the kisses in olive groves, the slow dances under starlight, shattered in an instant. In his mind flashed Marco's easy laughter with her, the way her eyes lit up when his brother teased her. Innocent, he had thought. But now, jealousy, fierce and primal, roared through his veins like wildfire. It fed on every insecurity he had ever buried, that he was too dark, too stained, too monstrous for a woman like her. That sooner or later she would see the truth and turn to someone unburdened by blood. He stood rooted, fists clenched so tightly his nails drew blood from his palms. Confront her, demand answers,
No, he could not bear to hear the confirmation from her lips. His world, the fragile, beautiful world he had dared to believe in, crumbled into ash. Without a sound, Vincenzo turned and walked away, each step heavier than the last. He did not see Isabella press her face into her hands and sob for the love she feared she was losing, did not hear her whisper his name again and again like a prayer unanswered. By the time she lifted her head, wiping tears and drawing a shaky breath, the garden was empty. The only witness to her confession was the indifferent sea, crashing endlessly against the rocks below. And in the villa above, Vincenzo poured another glass with hands that would not stop shaking, believing the woman he loved more than life itself had just confessed her heart belonged to another. True love, so fiercely won, now hung by the thinnest thread, torn apart not by enemies or danger, but by words half heard, and a heart too afraid to trust its own happiness.
The storm broke over Villa Moretti that night, thunder rolling in from the sea like distant artillery. Inside, Vincenzo was a man unraveling. He stood alone in the master suite they had shared for mere weeks, weeks that now felt like a lifetime of foolish hope. The room still carried her scent, jasmine and warm skin woven into the sheets, clinging to the silk robe draped across the chaise. On the nightstand sat the small silver frame he had placed there days ago, a candid photograph of Isabella laughing on the yacht, hair wild in the wind, eyes sparkling with joy meant only for him. He stared at it until the image blurred. Then, with a sound halfway between a snarl and a sob, he swept the frame from the table. It shattered against the terracotta floor, glass splintering like his heart. The diamond necklace, the one he had fastened around her throat with vows of forever, lay discarded on the dresser where she had left it that morning. He snatched it up, chain biting into his palm, and for a moment considered crushing the stone itself. Instead, he hurled it across the room. It struck the mirror with a sharp crack, leaving a spiderweb fracture that distorted his reflection into something monstrous. He poured grappa with shaking hands, one glass, then another, sinking into the leather armchair that faced the open windows. Moonlight spilled across the floor like spilled milk. In the silence, the fragments of her overheard words played on endless repeat. Can't stop thinking about him. Every beat of my heart belongs to him. Each repetition was a blade twisting deeper. Visions tormented him. Isabella in Marco's arms, her luminous smile bestowed on his brother, her body arching beneath hands that were not stained with blood. The thought was acid in his veins. He had given her everything, his protection, his name, his soul, and she had taken it only to turn to someone purer, lighter, worthy. Downstairs, the family had gathered for a late supper, voices murmuring in the dining room. Vincenzo descended like a dark cloud, the air shifting as he entered. Marco sat at the long table, laughing with Sophia over some childhood story. He looked up, grin fading at the sight of his brother's face, pale, eyes wild, jaw clenched so tight it looked carved from stone. Vincenzo, Marco rose halfway. You look... Stay away from her, Vincenzo said, voice low and lethal. The room stilled. Silverware paused midair. Marco frowned. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Each word dripped ice. I heard enough. I see how you look at her, how she laughs with you. Touch her again, speak to her again, and I swear on our father's grave, brother or not, I will end you. Gasps rippled around the table. Donna Elena half rose, hand pressed to her chest. Vincenzo, what madness is this? But he was already turning away, leaving stunned silence in his wake. Marco stared after him, confusion hardening into anger. The family fracture he had feared for years now gaped open, raw and bleeding. Isabella found him later in the library, a room of dark wood and leather-bound volumes, where he sometimes retreated to think. She had felt the chill all evening, his absence at dinner, the whispers that followed her like shadows. When she entered, he stood at the window,
back rigid, a fresh glass in his hand. "Vincenzo," she whispered, closing the door softly. "Please, talk to me. Something's wrong, I feel it, ever since this afternoon." He didn't turn. "Go back to Rio, Isabella." The words struck her like a physical blow. She crossed the room until she stood just behind him, close enough to touch, though she didn't dare. "What are you saying? I don't understand. What have I done?" Finally he faced her, and the devastation in his eyes stole her breath. Pain, betrayal, rage, all warring beneath the surface. "You've done enough." His voice cracked like breaking ice. "I heard you in the garden, every word." Confusion clouded her features. "The garden? I was speaking to the night, to you." "Don't," he cut her off sharply. "Don't lie to me now. I heard you confess it, how you ache for him, how your heart belongs to another. Did you think I wouldn't find out, that I would let you play me for a fool in my own house?" Tears sprang instantly to her eyes. "Vincenzo, no, you misunderstood. There is no one else. How could there be? You are my forever." Her voice broke as she reached for him. "Please don't push me away. I love you, only you." He flinched from her touch as if burned. The lie he believed armored him against the pleading in her eyes. "I gave you my heart," he said, the words torn from somewhere deep and pleading. "I opened every guarded part of me, trusted you with things I've never trusted anyone, and you broke it. You broke me." A sob tore for her throat. "Vincenzo, listen to me." "No." The finality in his voice was worse than shouting. "Go, before I say something we both regret more than this." She stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, searching for the man who had once looked at her like she was salvation. He was gone, replaced by this stranger carved from grief and fury. Slowly, as if moving through water, she stepped toward him one last time. Her hands rose to frame his face, trembling, desperate. He didn't pull away, but he didn't lean in either. For one aching moment, she pressed her forehead to his, breathing him in, memorizing the feel of him. "I love you," she whispered against his lips, voice shattered. "Whatever you believe, that will never change." Then she kissed him, soft, lingering, a goodbye poured into salt tears and trembling breath. He stood motionless, letting her, but offering nothing back. When she pulled away, his eyes were closed, jaw clenched against the tremor she could feel beneath her palms.
She released him and walked out, each step tearing another piece of her heart. Vincenzo remained in the library long after her footsteps faded, staring at the empty doorway. Only when he was truly alone did he sink to his knees among the scattered books, pressing his face into hands that still carried the ghost of her touch. Outside, the storm finally broke, rain lashing the windows like tears the heavens themselves could no longer contain.
The days after Isabella left blurred into a haze of salt air and unshed tears. She arrived back in Rio under a sky the color of bruised peaches, the familiar chaos of the city pressing in like an unwanted embrace. Her tiny apartment in Lapa felt too small, too empty, every corner echoing with memories of a man who was an ocean away. She moved through rehearsals and performances like a ghost, her smiles painted on, her body moving to rhythms that no longer reached her heart. It was 2 weeks later, on a humid morning when the rain drummed relentlessly on the tin roof, that the truth revealed itself. Isabella sat on the bathroom floor, a thin plastic stick trembling in her hand. 2 pink lines stared back at her, undeniable, life-altering, pregnant. A tiny life sparked in the midst of the most devastating heartbreak she had ever known. She curled into herself, knees drawn to her chest, and let the sobs come. They tore from her throat in raw, ragged waves until she thought she might break apart. In the bedroom, she found the one thing she had unconsciously kept, Vincenzo's white linen shirt,
forgotten in her haste to pack. She pressed it to her face, inhaling the faint trace of his scent, bergamot, sea salt, and something uniquely him that still lingered in the fabric. "Vincenzo," she whispered, the name a prayer against the cotton. Our baby needs you." She rocked gently, one hand cradling the still flat plane of her stomach, tears soaking the shirt. "I need you." Across the Atlantic, in Sicily, Vincenzo Moretti was slowly dying. He moved through the villa like a specter, meals untouched, sleep fractured by nightmares of her tear-streaked face. The family watched him with growing alarm. He no longer attended meetings, no longer issued orders. The empire he had built within on momentum alone, while its leaders stared endlessly at the sea from the cliffside terrace where they had once danced. In his pocket, he carried the silk scarf she had worn the night she arrived, soft ivory, embroidered with tiny jasmine flowers. He would pull it out in quiet moments, pressing it to his lips as if he could still taste her skin. The memories assaulted him without mercy. Her laughter in the olive groves, the way she sighed his name when he kissed the hollow of her throat, the warmth of her body curled against him under Sicilian stars. He was haunted. Every touch, every whispered promise, played on an endless loop, until he thought he might go mad. It was Sophia who finally broke the silence. 3 weeks after Isabella's departure, she found Vincenzo on that same terrace at dusk, the scarf twisted between his fingers like a lifeline. The sky burned crimson, mirroring the torment in his eyes. "Fratello," she said softly, sitting beside him. "You are destroying yourself. And for what? A misunderstanding." He didn't look at her. "She betrayed me, Sophia. I heard the words myself."
Did you? Sophia's voice was gentle but firm. Did you hear all of them? Or only the pieces that fed your fear? He turned then, eyes hollow. "What are you saying?" Sophia took his hand. "That night in the garden, Isabella wasn't confessing love for another man. She was confessing love for you. She sat with me afterward, sobbing because she thought she loved you too much, because she was terrified of losing you to your world. Every word you overheard, 'My heart belongs to him. I would give up everything.' She was speaking of you, Vincenzo. Only you." The world tilted. The scarf slipped from his fingers, fluttering to the stone floor. "No," he whispered, but it was the sound of a man drowning. "Yes," Sophia's eyes filled with tears of her own. "Marco told me what you accused him of. He's furious, hurt, but more than that, he's heartbroken for you. We all are. You sent away the one person who loved you purely, completely, because you were too afraid to believe you deserved it." Vincenzo staggered to his feet, the terrace spinning beneath him. Memory after memory crashed over him now in horrifying clarity. Isabella's pleas in the library, the desperation in her kiss goodbye, the way she had clutched at him as if he were slipping away even then. He had done this. He had taken the purest love he had ever known, the only light that had ever pierced his darkness, and crushed it with his own hands. A sound escaped him then, raw and animal, as he sank to his knees. He pressed his face into the scarf on the ground, breathing her in, the full weight of his devastation finally breaking him open. Days later, the consequences of his recklessness caught up with him. A meeting with a rival family in Catania turned bloody when Vincenzo, distracted, hollow, walked into an ambush he would once have scented from miles away. Gunfire shattered the night. Bullets tore through flesh and stone. He fought like a man with nothing left to lose, taking down 3 attackers before a 4th shot grazed his side, another clipping his shoulder. As he fell against a warehouse wall, blood pooling warm beneath him, death whispered close. But in the darkness closing in, it was Isabella's face he saw, her smile on the yacht, her tears in the library, the imagined curve of her body swollen with new life he would never know. No, the thought surged through him like fire. Not like this. Not without telling her I know. Not without begging her forgiveness. With strength born of desperation, he dragged himself clear, pressing a hand to the worst wound while his men fought off the remaining attackers. Thoughts of her, of the love he had thrown away,
of the future he had nearly destroyed, kept him conscious until help arrived. In the hospital afterward, stitches pulling and pain a constant throb, Vincenzo stared at the ceiling and made a silent vow to the woman who still held his shattered heart.
He would find her. He would crawl across the world on broken knees if he had to, and when he did, he would spend the rest of his life proving he was worthy of the love he had nearly lost forever. In Rio, Isabella fell asleep each night clutching his shirt, whispering his name into the dark. In Sicily, Vincenzo woke each morning clutching her scarf, whispering hers. Two souls, separated by an ocean and a cruel twist of fate, aching in perfect, silent harmony, longing for the moment their worlds would collide once more.
The private jet touched down in Rio de Janeiro just as the sun bled gold across Guanabara Bay. Vincenzo had not slept in 36 hours. His wounds from the ambush still pulled with every movement, stitches hidden beneath a crisp black shirt, but the pain was nothing compared to the ache in his chest. He had crossed an ocean with only one thought burning through him. Find her. Beg. Make this right. Carnival was in its final, feverish days. The streets throbbed with drums and feathers, bodies painted in impossible colors, the air thick with cachaça and desperation. Vincenzo moved through the crowds like a shadow, tall, dark-suited, eyes scanning every face, every swirl of sequins and swaying hips. He searched the Sambadrome, the Blocos and Lapa, the packed beaches of Ipanema and Copacabana. Hours blurred into a haze of music and strangers until hope began to fray. At dusk on the third day, exhausted and hollow, he walked the length of Copacabana alone. The sky had turned to molten copper, the sun sinking toward the horizon in a blaze of fire. Most of the crowds had migrated inland to the evening parades, leaving the beach strangely quiet, except for the endless hush of waves. And then he saw her. Far down the sand, where the tide kissed the shore in gentle foam, a lone figure danced. Slow, graceful turns, arms lifted to the dying light. Sonda, stripped of performance, danced only for the sea and the sky. Isabella. Even from a distance he knew the curve of her body, the fall of her dark curls. She wore a simple white cotton dress that caught the wind, clinging softly to the gentle swell of her belly. Pregnant. The sight struck him like a bullet to the heart. His knees nearly buckled right there on the promenade. She was carrying his child, their child, and he had sent her away believing she had betrayed him. The cruelty of what he had done crashed over him anew. He walked toward her as if in a trance, shoes sinking into warm sand. She spun once more, eyes closed, face tilted to the sunset, tears glistening on her cheeks. Only when his shadow fell across her did she open them. For a moment, time stopped. Vincenzo. Her voice was barely a whisper, carried away by the wind. Her hands flew instinctively to protect the small curve of her stomach. He dropped to his knees in the sand before her, heedless of the expensive suit, heedless of everything but the woman standing radiant and heartbroken in the fading light. Isabella. Mi amore. His voice cracked, raw with everything he had held back for weeks. I was a fool. A blind, terrified fool. I heard only pieces of your heart that night in the garden, and twisted them into something ugly because I couldn't believe someone as pure as you could truly love a man like me.
Tears spilled freely down her face now. She took a step back, arms wrapping around herself. You destroyed me, Vincenzo. You looked me in the eyes and said I broke you. Do you know what that did to me? To wake up every day without you, knowing our child would never know its father because you wouldn't listen? I know. His head bowed, hands open on his thighs in complete surrender. I know what I did. I live with it every second. Your love rewrote my soul, Isabella. It took the darkest parts of me and filled them with light I never thought possible, and I threw it away out of fear. I don't deserve your forgiveness, I know that, but I'm begging you anyway. You are my beginning and my end. I can't breathe without you. I don't want to. She sobbed then, a broken sound that tore at him worse than any bullet. She turned toward the sea, shoulders shaking.
How can I trust you won't hurt me again? He rose slowly, not touching her yet. Because I would rather die than cause you one more tear. Because the moment I learned the truth, I nearly did die, and the only thing that kept me alive was the thought of coming back to you, to both of you. He gestured toward her belly with trembling reverence. May I? After an eternity, she nodded once, barely perceptible. Vincenzo stepped closer and sank to his knees again, this time pressing his forehead gently against the swell of her stomach. His hands hovered, afraid to touch, until she guided them there herself. Warmth radiated through the thin cotton, the miracle they had created in love, nearly lost to his stupidity. I'm here, he whispered to the life beneath his palms. Your mother is the strongest, bravest woman in the world, and I will spend every day proving I'm worthy of you both. Isabella's fingers threaded through his hair, trembling. When he looked up, her eyes were stormy with pain and longing. I never stopped loving you, she said, voice breaking, even when I hated what you did. He rose then, cupping her face with infinite tenderness, Dums brushing away her tears. Then let me spend the rest of my life making it right. Marry me, Isabella, not as the man I was, but as the man you've made me want to be. She searched his eyes for a long moment, the sun finally slipping below the horizon behind them. Then, with a sob that was half forgiveness, half surrender, she fell into his arms. Their kiss was salt and tears and redemption, slow at first, then desperate, weeks of separation pouring into every touch. He held her as if she might vanish, one hand cradling the back of her head, the other splayed protectively over their child. But the shadows of his world were never far behind.
A sudden shout shattered the moment, harsh voices in Portuguese from the promenade. 3 men in dark jackets, faces Vincenzo recognized instantly, enforcers from the rival family who had ambushed him in Catania. They had followed him across the ocean, sensing weakness, ready to strike at the heart of what mattered most. Vincenzo pushed Isabella behind him instinctively, shielding her body with his own as the men advanced, one drawing a knife that glinted in the last light. "Stay back," he growled in Portuguese, voice deadly calm. The first lunged. Vincenzo moved with lethal precision, years of brutal training overriding his injuries. He disarmed the man in 2 moves, sending the knife spinning into the sand. The second came from the side. Vincenzo took the blow to his shoulder, the same one still healing, but used the momentum to slam the attacker down. The third reached for Isabella. Time slowed. Vincenzo roared, a primal sound of pure fury, and threw himself between them. The blade meant for her sliced across his forearm instead, blood blooming dark against his sleeve. He didn't feel it. He drove his fist into the man's throat, dropping him gasping to the sand. In moments it was over. His men, who had been trailing at a discreet distance, swarming in to secure the attackers, but Vincenzo didn't see them. He turned immediately to Isabella, pulling her trembling form against him. "Are you hurt? The baby?" She shook her head, clinging to him, eyes wide with shock and fear. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing." He pressed her face to his chest, shielding her from the sight. "Nothing matters but you, both of you." As sirens wailed in the distance and the last light faded from the sky, Vincenzo held her tightly on the blood-stained sand, proving, without words, that he would shield her with his life 1,000 times over. In the circle of his arms, beneath a canopy of emerging stars, their fractured love began, slowly and painfully, to mend.
The final reckoning came sooner than Vincenzo expected. 3 days after the attack on Copacabana, word reached Sicily that the Moretti Empire teetered on the edge of war. Rivals smelled blood in the water. His absence, his wounds, the whispers that Vincenzo Moretti had gone soft over a woman. His uncles demanded his immediate return. A summit was called in the old stone cantina beneath the villa, the same room where generations of Moretti men had carved up territory and passed judgment in smoke and shadow. Vincenzo flew through the night, landing in Palermo at dawn with Isabella's hand clasped tightly in his. She had insisted on coming, refused to let him face this alone. Now she waited in their suite while he descended to the cantina, every step heavier than the last. The long table was crowded, uncles with weathered faces and cold eyes, cousins armed and loyal, Marco at the far end, still wounded by the earlier accusation, but present because blood demanded it. Donna Elena and Sophia sat to the side, faces pale but resolute. The eldest uncle, Salvatore, spoke first. "The Calabrians are moving on our ports. The Albanians want blood for Catania. You disappear for weeks, chase a woman across the ocean, and now this? The family needs its capo, Vincenzo, not a lovesick boy." Murmurs of agreement rippled around the table. Vincenzo stood at the head, hands braced on the ancient wood. He was still bandaged beneath the black shirt, pain a dull throb, but his voice rang clear and steady. "You're right," he said. "The family needs strength. It needs certainty. And for too long I gave it that, by becoming the monster you required. I spilled blood so none of you had to. I carried the darkness so you could walk in the light." He straightened, meeting every pair of eyes in turn. "But I have seen another way. A better way. I have held the woman I love while she carried our child, felt her tremble because my world followed me even there. I have looked into the future and seen what this life will take from them, from us, if I stay on this throne." Silence fell, thick and stunned. "I am stepping down," he declared, "effective tonight. Marco," he turned to his brother, voice softening with regret and pride, "you were always the better man for this. Kinder, wiser. You will lead with honor, not just fear. The family will be safe in your hands." Marco stared, speechless. Salvatore surged to his feet. "You would throw away everything our father built for a dancer?" Vincenzo's smile was small, fierce, utterly certain. "I am not throwing anything away. I am choosing everything that matters. My empire is no longer ports and power and blood money. My empire is a woman who taught me what it meant to be truly alive, and the child we made from love, not legacy." He placed a sealed envelope on the table. Deeds, accounts, contacts, everything needed for a clean transition.
"I love this family," he said quietly. "I always will. But I love them more, and I will not raise my son or daughter in the shadow of what I was." He turned and walked out, leaving chaos and stunned silence behind him. Marco caught him in the corridor moments later, pulling him into a fierce embrace. "You were never just the monster, fratello," Marco whispered. "Go, be happy, we'll be all right." That same evening, Vincenzo and Isabella flew back to Brazil, this time for good. They chose a secluded stretch of beach near Praia do Rosa, far from Rio's crowds, where the sand was soft gold and the water shimmered emerald at dawn. No guests, no priest, no witnesses but the sky and sea. Isabella wore a simple ivory silk gown that flowed around the gentle curve of her belly. Vincenzo, linen trousers and an open white shirt, sleeves rolled to reveal the fresh scars that marked his devotion. As the first light painted the horizon rose and gold, they stood barefoot at the water's edge, hands joined. Vincenzo took her left hand and gently placed it over the swell of their child. His own covered hers, warm and steady. "Listen to me, la mia anima," he began, voice rough with emotion. "I spent my life building walls and empires of stone and fear. But you tore them all down with a single glance. You and our child are my empire now, my only kingdom. Everything I am, everything I will ever be, belongs to you both." Tears slipped down Isabella's cheeks, catching the newborn light. "I will love you fiercely," he continued, "with the same fire that once destroyed. I will love you tenderly, with the gentleness you alone have taught me. And I will love you eternally, beyond this life, beyond any Shio that ever tried to claim me." He slipped a plain platinum band onto her finger, then offered his own hand. She slid its mate into place, fingers trembling. "With this ring," she whispered, "I choose you, every day, every sunrise, every heartbeat of this child, and all the ones to come." They kissed then, slow, deep, passionate, waves crashing around their ankles as if the ocean itself applauded. Salt and sunrise and redemption mingled on their lips. When they drew apart, foreheads resting together, the sun crested fully, bathing them in liquid gold. Vincenzo pulled her gently into his arms, and they began to dance. No music but the rhythm of the sea and their own arts. She swayed against him, belly pressed to his hands cradling the small of her back and the curve where their child grew. They moved like they had that first night on the yacht, effortless, timeless, whole. Scarred, yes.
changed forever by the fire they had walked through, but whole. As the sun climbed higher, Vincenzo bent to her ear. Forever starts now. Isabella smiled through happy tears, lacing her fingers through his. Forever started the moment our eyes met across the carnival lights.
They stood there long after the dawn had fully broken, two souls intertwined, hands clasped tightly, watching the endless horizon stretch before them. A new life, a new world, built not on power or blood, but on a love fierce enough to rewrite destinies. And in that quiet, perfect moment, with the future blooming bright as the Brazilian sun, Vincenzo Moretti finally knew peace.